WWDC 2025 is close to 1 month away, as it's happening on June the 9th. Usually WWDC is for software releases only, but this year we may get some hardware updates too. So here are 6 major software updates and 5 hardware updates to expect. But before that, our sponsor UGREEN has sent over 2 awesome Find My compatible trackers so that you never lose your wallet or keys. More about them later in the video. Okay, so starting off with the software releases, the first one is iOS 19, which is said to be getting the biggest design overhaul since iOS 7. We're expecting a visionOS inspired UI with more transparency, more rounded UI elements, 3D UI panels, and possibly even an updated shape for the icons. And based on what we've seen so far, I'm absolutely loving this design change. Not only will it look far more modern, but it will also tidy up a lot of the UI design inconsistencies that we've got right now, like the duplicate toggles in the camera app. Now, aside from this major design overhaul, another big iOS 19 change is said to be in terms of multitasking. No, we are not getting side-by-side multitasking, but we are said to be getting Stage Manager when connected to an external display. This is set to work on any USB-C iPhone, so the iPhone 15 and newer, and work in a very similar way to how it works on the iPad. Which means that we'll get this Samsung DeX-like experience when you've got your iPhone connected to a monitor, and probably also when it's paired to an external Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. Personally, I think that this would be awesome, as if you don't have a dedicated computer at home, you can just buy a monitor, Bluetooth keyboard, and Bluetooth mouse, and turn your iPhone into one. Even if you'll have a more restrictive experience compared to an actual Mac, at least you'll have that option. And lastly, navigation on large screen iPhones is also set to improve, by Apple moving the in-app search bars to the bottom of the screen rather than at the top. Yeah, I guess we'll need to update our app wallpapers as well in order to support this, as we've actually recently updated our search and we moved it from the bottom to the top right here. Now, Apple Intelligence is also getting some updates. More specifically, it is set to work with more first-party apps. Although the big contextually aware Siri updates, those have been pushed to 2026 or even 2027. Which brings me to iPadOS 19, and here, aside from the major redesign that iOS 19 is also getting, the biggest change is said to be an improved multitasking experience. More specifically, Stage Manager is said to be getting an always-on menu bar, just like we've got on macOS. And I mean, look, I really don't get why they just cannot give us full-on macOS when connected to the keyboard, as now, especially with that menu bar, that's where everything is going. It's just that iPadOS, even with these updates, will still be inferior to macOS functionality-wise. Speaking of which, there are no major macOS changes expected here, aside from that UI redesign that iOS 19 and iPadOS 19 are also getting, and possibly some performance updates and fixes. As for watchOS 12, we are set to be getting some iOS 19-like UI updates, although watchOS 12 would not be a full-on OS redesign like watchOS 10 was. Instead, it would simply have some smaller UI changes. And Apple Intelligence is set to be coming to the Apple Watch as well, at least to some extent. We are set to be getting some Apple Intelligence-powered coaching, although none of these Apple Intelligence features are actually set to work on the Apple Watch directly, but rather they would run on the iPhone or the cloud, and then they would be pushed to the Apple Watch. Although personally, I just want to see more watch faces. Which brings me to visionOS 3, which is actually expected to be a pretty big update. Mark Gurman even called it quote-unquote feature-packed, although he didn't really give us any specifics. More first-party apps are expected to be added, which, yes, I would love to see, and same goes for more environments. But really, the number one thing that I would love to see is just an option for a smaller font. You see, whenever I use iPadOS apps, or even some visionOS apps on the Vision Pro, all of the buttons and toggles are just massive. And because the UI elements are just so massive on visionOS, I pretty much never use the virtual desktop feature alongside separate apps, as it's just way too cumbersome. So yeah, I would love to have the same UI scaling that I've now got on the virtual desktop for native visionOS and iPadOS apps. And the last software release is set to be tvOS 19, which isn't expected to have any major changes aside from some design tweaks to bring it more in line to iOS 19, iPadOS 19, and the macOS 15 design changes. Oh, and if you're wondering about Apple Intelligence on the Apple TV, that is likely not coming out until the next Apple TV is released towards the end of this year, as the current Apple TV released in 2022 still runs on the A15 chip, and Apple Intelligence requires at least the A17 Pro. And this brings me to the 5 possible hardware releases. The first of which may be the AirTag 2. You see, the 2nd-gen AirTag has been rumored for a mid-2025 release, so either a WWDC announcement or a press release around WWDC. Now, this AirTag 2 is rumored to have the same design as the AirTag 1, but include the second generation ultra-wideband chip for up to 3 times the range compared to the AirTag 1. And there's also been some talks about Vision Pro integration, where you would be able to see your AirTag 2 through walls, which would be really cool. Now, if we somehow don't get the AirTag 2 soon and you still want to get an amazing tracker, well, that's where our sponsor UGREEN comes into play. Okay, so earlier I mentioned UGREEN's affordable trackers that make sure you never lose your wallet, keys, or anything else really. The first of which is UGREEN's FineTrack Smart Tracker, which works perfectly with Apple's Find My app on iOS. No installation needed at all. And the replaceable CR2032 battery lasts 2 years, thanks to its super low-powered chip. And they are UL 4200A certified, which means that they have been designed to prevent small children from swallowing them too. If I leave my keys behind, I immediately get notified on my phone, and if they get misplaced at home, the 80 decibel alarm helps me find them with ease. But look, if you need something even thinner, then we've got UGREEN's 1.7mm thin FineTrack Slim Smart Finder, which easily fits in wallets, passports, luggage, and more. On a single charge, its built-in rechargeable battery lasts for 1 year. As well as this, you get all the features that you get with the FineTrack Smart Finder. So keep track of all of your items with UGREEN by using the links below. Now, back to the hardware releases. Aside from the AirTag 2, we may also see an updated Mac Pro. You see, the Mac Studio was updated back in March with the M4 Max and the M3 Ultra chips, which leaves the Mac Pro, Apple's most expensive Mac, very out of date, since it's still running on the M2 Ultra. Mark Gurman did say that an updated Mac Pro should be out around mid-2025, so a WWDC announcement would make a lot of sense. Although, aside from the chip upgrade to the M3 Ultra from the M2 Ultra, there aren't any other changes expected, which means that I would still not be recommending the Mac Pro over the Mac Studio. As well, yes, you do get more ports and the possibility to expand the storage or the ports by adding more connectivity cards. It is significantly larger and also quite a bit more expensive. Now, if we do get this Mac Pro at WWDC, there's also a very high chance that we'll also see a brand new Pro Display XDR. This was announced at WWDC 2019 alongside the current Mac Pro design, and we haven't had any updates since. The latest rumors come from Mark Gurman, who stated that Apple's working on 2 new monitors, one of which could be an updated Pro Display XDR. As for what would be changing, I do expect mini LED technology, which we actually do not have on the current model. We do have dimming zones, but only 576, whereas on a 14-inch MacBook Pro, we have 2010. So a pretty big difference here, especially when you consider the sheer size difference between the two. But aside from mini LED and possibly a higher refresh rates, now that we have Thunderbolt 5 on the latest Macs, I don't expect any other changes. Now, I mentioned that there were 2 new monitors in the works. One being the Pro Display XDR and the other being a brand new studio display. This is said to still have the same size at 27 inches, but it is rumored to have a mini LED backlight too, which would dramatically improve the contrast ratio and the black levels compared to the current LCD studio display, as well as possibly bump the refresh rate from 60Hz up to 90. Now, I was a bit skeptical when I first heard this, as Apple doesn't use 90Hz in any of their products. And since the leaker also claimed that the M3 iPad Air would also feature 90Hz, which we all know it didn't, it is pretty safe to assume that the second generation studio display would either jump straight to 120Hz or stick with 60Hz entirely. But regardless of whether or not we'll see some display updates, one way to make your current displays look even better is by trying out our app wallpapers for some awesome 8K designs. You can download wallpapers for free from the App Store or the Play Store. And this brings me to the 5th possible hardware release, the Apple Home Hub. This has been rumored for quite some time now, and it's said to be an iPad mini-like device with a HomePod-like speaker stuck to its back. Basically the equivalent of a Google Nest Hub, just with a bigger 6 to 7-inch display. The purpose of it is for you to be able to control your smart home accessories with this display that would either attach to a speaker dock and act like a HomePod, or you'd also be able to detach it from the speaker and then attach it magnetically to a surface like a fridge or a wall, possibly if you buy some sort of a mount. Kind of similar to Google's Pixel tablet. Now, this was rumored to launch in early 2025, however, due to the ongoing Siri delays, it may actually be pushed to 2026. However, if it's not delayed to 2026, then we may see it at WWDC. But yeah, which one of these announcements are you excited for the most? That is definitely iOS 19 for me. But yeah, let me know down below, and do subscribe if you want to see more iOS 19 and WWDC related updates. I'm Daniel, ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.